I just warmed that up for you for later. At this point, would you please call the roll for us?
Pete Wildeboer,
Present.
Josie Barnhart. Here.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, we're all here as accounted for, and that's it. Okay, the end. No, at this point, Ms. Sutton, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you carry on. Thank you, Ms. Sutton.
Sure, thank you. So everyone should have a handout. If you don't have a handout, we have extras over, I believe, with Jenny, if anyone needs one. Just raise your hand and she'll be glad to bring you one. So in the handouts, there's 3 different sections. So there'll be a summary sheet on the front, and then you'll have a second section that starts with repairs and renovations, and then there's going to be a last section called facilities capital. And so I wanted to start talking through the summary page. That's the front document. On this page, you can see at the top the different requests that we've received this year for capital. You have 3 different categories listed here: repairs and renovations, technology, furniture and equipment, and vehicles. You can see that each category has different priority numbers, 1, 2, and 3, and then we also have requests for this coming up year and the following year. So you can see that all in that top chart. The bottom provides information from revenue sources, potentially to fund these projects for future years. So do you have what you... Okay, I just looked at it. You guys have copies, right? So, Jenny, can you give them a copy of the handout if they don't have it? Because I think that might be helpful. Okay. The bottom shows the recommended revenue sources. So we are estimating to receive capital money next year of 2.5 million coming from our traditional lottery, which is program 76, and another 663,000 coming from repairs and renovations, which is also lottery. It's just 2 different programs for us. And then a potential request or ask from the county. And so when we're looking at the total column to the right in that bottom chart, it equals 10.5 million. How we came up with that is just taking the top priorities from each category and assuming that we're able to fund all of those projects. That would get us to the 10.5 million request. And that includes county and the county capital and the lottery request. So all of this is on the first page.
Okay, there we go. We got it. Thank you.
Yep. I want to make sure we're all together because I know it's a lot of information. So so everything I just talked about is all summarized on that top document. And so I thought so the other thing is normally that's all we talk about in this capital committee, or those 3 categories. This year we have a 4th category, which we're calling facilities capital, and it's the last document in your package. And so what I would like to do is go through that last document at the very end and go through the other items first, if that's okay with the group.
Sure.
Okay, so let's start with, so now that we've gone through the summary, I thought I would let each area talk about their top priorities. And of course, you can ask any questions about top priorities or anything further down on the list if you'd like. And so, Mr. Anderson, if you could start us off with repairs and renovations. So this will be page 1 on the first clip doc group. Okay.
So just a little bit about the process so you know how we get to where we are today. Every school, every department has the opportunity each year to submit capital requests. You know, they come in to Leanne and facilities, and we put it on a giant spreadsheet. And we go through those and we categorize the request, 1, 2, or 3, or what we call imperative, essential, and important. Then we take the first column, imperative or category 1, and we put it on a separate sheet and prioritize those individually. And that's what is attached for your review today. Those items that are in the column for essential or important, they don't go away. We go through them and reprioritize each and every year. Sometimes some of those items we're able to take care of them outside of the capital process. Sometimes they go up in priority, based on the need and conditions and so forth. But that is how we get to where we are today. So we'll be going through the imperative column. The imperative column it's that says New Hanover County Schools repairs and renovations fiscal year 25-26. There's a copy up on the projector. In the first column, you'll see priorities. And what I'd like to do today is just briefly go through each of the number 1 priorities, because that's pretty close to matching the projected revenue and what we think we'll be able to fund. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Lawrence, let her go through those. Please just interrupt, stop us when we're on a line item that you have a question about. And then if you have questions about the other priorities, feel free to ask once we go through the priority number 1s. Or, I know it's a lot, you get home tonight, you're looking over it, feel free to email me, and we'll be glad to answer those questions. All good? All right.
Thank you. And I apologize in advance, my throat's giving me some issues, so hopefully it'll hold out while we go through this. But as Mr. Anderson noted, any questions, just let me know as we're walking through this. We have at our top priority replacement of 3 underground storage tanks at the for the transportation department at the CVRC. To reallocate funds toward the emergency structural repairs that were in New Hanover, so it tops our list. Due to the age of the tanks, it's a high priority to get those replaced with newer tanks. Line item 2, annual roof maintenance. This is we've been doing this now for about 3 years. Allocating funding to address various repairs that are identified in our annual roofing evaluation. Every year we have annual roofing evaluations with and they give us a list and a report of things to take care of. And I will say this, the number of work orders due to roof-related issues has dropped significantly. We're really excited to see the effectiveness of this investment. And every year the list gets smaller and smaller. So it's working. Line item 3, at Minnie Evans, there was a cloud acoustic system that failed and fell that is in need of replacement. Next line item, Carolina Beach and Freeman, we're targeting some replacement of existing playground equipment. There's a lot of safety issues associated with the older playground equipment, so that causes that need to rise to a high level of priority. The next line item for Bellamy, replacement of HVAC control systems. The existing systems are obsolete, and what that means for us is that when something is broken, there is no part to replace it, and we will lose control of that HVAC system at that campus. I think this may be one of the very last Novar systems that we have. It's an outdated, older system. It was great in its time, but it's just not supported by the manufacturer anymore. So that makes it a high priority for replacement. At Ashley, the next line item, replacement of the emergency generator at Ashley due to the end of life.
Can I ask you a question on that?
Yes, sir.
That's basically just used if we use that as a shelter, right? Or what else would it be used for?
So there's this most of our schools are small, and the emergency lighting and systems have battery backup. Because of the size of Ashley, Murray, Minnie Evans, when that school was constructed, it was more efficient to put in a generator to run those services. But this is not an emergency generator that you would find at one of our shelters.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Going down the list, we have a backflow. We need to replace backflow preventers at the schools listed: Castle Hayne, Holly Tree, Murrayville, Noble, Wrightsboro, and Wrightsville Beach Elementary School. This is an important part of our connection with the municipal water supply. It makes it a necessity. Next two line items are similar in scope: Forest Hills and Carolina Beach, replacing existing flooring. These are two line items that have been on the list for a few years and sort of riding the tide as they grow closer to that top of the list, and there are priorities that we need to go ahead and make those replacements because the need's been there for a while. The next two line items are roof recover projects. These are based on evaluations from our engineers that do the annual roof inspections. One of the things that we try to target with our roofing evaluations, and our engineers are very sensitive to, is opportunities to recover roofs versus replacing them. So Wrightsboro and Williston are nearing the end of the window of time in which the roof can be recovered versus having to tear the roof off and replace it completely. A recovering of the roof costs half as much as the replacement. So we always take advantage of these opportunities to do the recover. It saves us a lot of money in the long run.
Ask a question on that also. How many times can we recover before we have to replace?
You know, when we're recovering that, we're another 25, 30 years on a roof.
Okay.
So it buys us the longevity of a new roofing system. But I have never been in a situation where we had to recover it more than once. And I'm sorry that I don't have the answer to that, but I'm going to find out.
All right, great, thank you.
But it basically restarts the clock when you recover.
It certainly does. We have the full manufacturer's warranty, 25-year warranty for a roof, as if it were brand new, a brand new building.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Lawrence, you had said earlier that we are seeing less issues with roof leaking. So this is a process that we've done in other buildings, recovering our roofs, which is half the price of replacing, and we're seeing less issues with roof damage.
That's correct.
Okay.
When we recover, it is the equivalent of a brand new roofing system. It is a very watertight system with a high level of success. We wouldn't propose it if we were seeing issues, and our engineers wouldn't either, but it is a very, very effective way to improve the roofing surface while saving money.
Thank you.
The next line item that kind of wraps up that first page is the Bellamy fascia replacement in Bellamy. This is a significant need. It's been problematic for a number of years, and we've placed it at a high priority. Moving on to the next page, just a few more of these priority one line items. At the top of the second page, you'll see at Myrtle Grove Middle School installing a sidewalk. It's going to be a connector to where DOT is going to have a light and a crosswalk to the neighborhood across the street. We're going to capture our end of that crosswalk and connect up to the building. The next line item, window replacement at Alderman. This is phase 3 of 3. We were able to do work utilizing some ESSER funds for previous phases. With our last phase 2, we simply didn't have the budget available through our ESSER funding to do all of the work. This would be replacement of windows around if you're there, the corridor and all the courtyard, all the windows that face the courtyard area. Next line item, Holly Tree envelope repairs. There are just significant deficits related to the entire building envelope at Holly Tree. Unfortunately, they date back to the construction. We were at one point trying to target ESSER funds for this, weren't able to do that. So we've got it prioritized until we repair the building envelope. There's so much air intrusion, moisture intrusion through the building envelope that until we make those repairs, we're going to be constantly fighting high humidity in the school. We did do repairs and upgrades to the HVAC system that will further serve the building and enhance the service to the building once these envelope repairs are made. But the equipment that we placed in there is working diligently and very hard to try to keep up with the humidity, and it has improved, but this would be icing on the cake. Next line item, flooring replacement at Porter's Neck and Castle Hayne. The multi-purpose room carpet we're experiencing failure, and unfortunately, one of those line items is Porter's Neck, which is relatively new. The carpet system that we implemented just has failed and is no longer manufactured. So we'll use a different product that will serve us better in the long run.
Question on that, I'm sorry to be the question guy today, but, as a former physical education teacher back in the day, is the carpets, I wouldn't say carpet's probably the best thing to have in the, because they use it quite a lot as a gym. Would it not be better to have a different kind of flooring in there?
Well, they do a lot of sitting on the floor, and so the carpet tends to be more welcome, and that's the feedback we've gotten in the past from principals. But that certainly is something that we can discuss because we've been utilizing it. That's been our standard. It has been in the past preferred by the principals because of the amount of activity where the kiddos are on the floor and sitting on the floor, and it's a little more comforting to the knees and elbows. But that's something we can look at and further discuss. The next to last line item in priority 1, lighting upgrades at Howe, upgrading the facility to LED lighting. We realized a significant reduction in energy costs when we changed to the LED lighting. The last line item is at the CBRC replacement of HVAC equipment that serves the main server room, which is a very important location within the district as far as the brains of the district that serve district-wide, and we're nearing the end of the useful life of that equipment. So that's running through all of the priority 1s. Are there any questions? Any additional questions? Or anything that if you've had a chance to look below that, any priority 2 items that you'd like to discuss?
I do have a question with that, Mr. Witterworth. This might be in a different section actually. If this is on page 4, it talks about painting the schools at both Wrightsboro and Gregory, including lead abatement, and I'm wondering why that might not be a higher priority to do that, rather than potentially waiting. A dollar amount adds up just over $600,000 for those 2 schools, but
So
it's on page
and
4.
the priority 3.
Priority 3 for Wrightsboro and Gregory.
Especially with the lead.
So I can tell you that one of the things that we have been doing recently is working with the Clean Schools for Carolina Kids program
Right.
and local health department is going out and surveying our schools on a regular basis and making sure that we maintain it so it doesn't get to the point where an abatement is needed.
Right.
And so we feel like at this point we've got a pretty good handle on that. We did a lead abatement at Winter Park this past summer. We did some lead abatement at Gregory. Those 2 schools were in far worse condition than these. So we feel pretty comfortable that we're at a point now where we can maintain the paint in a good condition, and that abatement isn't as high a priority.
I mean, Mr. Chair, that's really my only concern looking there. Do we have air test, quality tests that we do as far as partnering with the organization you just said, or how does that work so we can monitor?
So we do, as part of the program, the first step was to go out and we actually did water sampling at every school. And there were a couple of sinks and a couple of water fountains where the lead levels were above an acceptable range. And so we went in, typically we can just replace that fixture. It was a fairly easy, fix. And that eliminated any concern. So we have completed all of the lead testing in water. As you know, the asbestos is also part of the program. So there is no friable asbestos in any of our schools, and we do 6-month surveillance. So twice a year, we're out, a consultant is in our schools surveying all the asbestos that's identified in our AHERA plan, making sure that the condition of whatever that product is hasn't changed, it hasn't caused a concern. If it has, we'll immediately abate it. So the asbestos piece is taken care of. And then with the paint is the last thing on the list. Knowing that that's coming up, we have really stepped up our efforts in trying to get ahead of that curve. One of the reasons we went ahead and proceeded with Winter Park, and one of the reasons that, we're now making sure that, buildings built within a certain range are visually surveyed on a regular basis so that we don't have that paint peeling.
And I have just one quick question. The first thing on the second, number 2 priority, it talks about, cleaning the curtains, and says it's required by fire code. So are we in a situation that if we don't put that somehow in the first area, we'll be fined, or do we have a year to do that, or how's that work?
So it is a fire code requirement, and because of that, we're out testing the curtains on an annual basis. And over the past 3 years, we've made a lot of headway with that. This would have been ranked higher, but the band shell at Minnie Evans we feel is a higher need. It's a safety concern, obviously, but it's needed for us to continue to use that auditorium in the way it was designed.
Okay. But again, is there a chance of us being fined for this?
I'd have to go back and look at exactly, when they were up for replacement. If the last flame test failed, it potentially could. But I'd have to go back and look at each of those schools to let you know. Be glad to do that.
Okay, because I know that, fire marshals, they're second to none around in these places, so.
Well, and I'll be honest with you, I don't want to put any ideas out there, but the fire marshal isn't going through and flame testing curtains.
Okay.
We do that because we know, that we know it needs to be done.
Right.
And so if there was a fire and in the investigation, they determined that the curtains hadn't been maintained, then yes, we could be fined. But
Gotcha. Okay.
we're trying to stay ahead of that curve.
At the barn.
Now, several of the things in priority 1, and I think we've talked about this before, reads like my last physical, where it says end of life replacement or nearing useful life. Does that mean that they have broken already, or they are out of warranty? Like the first one down, generator replacement, it says end of life replacement. Does that mean that the generator that's currently there is not working?
It is working. So what that means is it is working, and in a lot of cases, it's working with a lot of bandages and maybe a crutch, and
Okay, yeah.
to get it, get it to that next year.
Gotcha.
But we're again trying to get ahead of that curve by
This is that
being
curve,
a little
okay.
more proactive in some of our replacements.
Thank you. That's what I figured.
Now the backflow devices, I'll share with you because I think this was a really positive story that we shared with Ashley in finance the other day. So we actually have all of our plumbers in the plumbing shop now certified to do backflow testing, eliminating a little over a $50,000 a year contract. So now not only are they going out and testing, but we're getting better feedback. I mean, when our guys are out there testing it, they're looking at the condition and seeing, wow, this might be good for now, but I'm not sure this backflow is going to make it another year. So that's just another example of end of life, but also I think a good story in that we're not only saving the district a little money, we're being a little more efficient and proactive in our maintenance approach.
Excellent. Great.
Okay, so we'll move on to page 6. This starts the technology category. I did notice an error on this sheet that I wanted to point out. My apologies. The first column that says request 2526 was actually 2425 information. So if you could draw a line through and disregard that column, my apologies for that. I'll make that correction. The second column that says request for 2627 is actually 2526 request. So that's the request that we'll be going through today. And I'll make that adjustment on the summary sheet at the front as well.
Great, thank you.
So I'll let Ms. Brinson or someone from her staff go through.
Yes. So the first item on our list is the Nutanix system. It was actually in our capital request for this year. We are using multiple sources of funding. That's actually going to be, part of it's E-rate eligible, so we'll get an E-rate discount for it. And then we're requesting for capital funds if we're not able to carry over some different, I think we are going to be carrying over operating funds. So we may or may not actually need this if we can carry over our operating funds. But this system will actually replace a system. Okay, to get the correct terms, Brian, want to hit that what the Nutanix does?
The Nutanix is replacing what's called our Cisco UCS system. It is our core data center that runs virtual servers, storage, compute power. It is a whole lot of servers all in one unit.
So, and with the E-rate process, so it's actually going to be on the board agenda review today for this, because with the E-rate process, we have to show that we have the funds to cover the part that E-rate's not covering before we submit it for E-rate. So that is why it'll be on the agenda, even though we're not going to actually do our purchase until after July 1 for our portion. Okay. Then the next couple of items on here, when you see like the one-to-one sustainability, cameras, and the new line devices and intercoms, we took the time to kind of go through and do a replacement, a sustainability plan, and basically kind of figure out what it's going to cost each year to sustain those different projects. So for the one-to-one sustainability, you were looking at, the 5.5 million, and that is to sustain it. So we're doing K-12 staff and students. Okay, and that would be every year. Going to change how we're doing it. We're looking at then purchasing devices for 3rd grade, 6th grade, and 9th grade. So the child will have a device from 3rd grade to 5th grade, a new device 6 to 8, and a new device from 9 to 12. And then our K2, we'd still do iPads, but they will last a little bit longer.
Thank you. I mean, this is a big ticket item. I know this has been discussed before. I mean, have we looked at potentially reevaluating and having on-site sets versus one-to-one? I mean, is this something that we're exploring to potentially, a 5.5 increase annually in addition to all the other projects we have is substantial.
Yes.
So that's where I'd just love to hear some of that feedback and conversation of where it's gone, as well as in comparison to the cost of textbooks. How much are we saving from there that we are actually in turn dumping into technology instead? I don't know if you have that number offhand, but.
Yeah, I don't have the textbook number offhand. It's been a long time since we bought multiple sets of textbooks.
Right.
We did have the conversation about going back to the mobile carts that we used to have. Schools didn't have enough. That was the complaint that we would hear because of, like you said, part of the curriculum is online. And so like your middle school math curriculum requires the students to have a device. So to try and coordinate all those kids having the device when they need to have it for math, plus then the other courses when they would need to have it. They don't use them all the time, but I think it's the coordination and the amount of stuff that is truly online. High schools especially, a lot of their stuff is online, and so they were relying before on students using their personal devices or even using their phones. I just don't think it's appropriate to expect a kid to use a phone to complete an assignment on. That's just not, it's not realistic, So we have had those conversations. We actually had those conversations when we met in senior staff last week to see about, going back. It would be a change. I'm not saying it couldn't be done. I think that's taking the district back instead of moving forward. We have looked at more affordable devices than the ones that we currently have, and that's the ones we're doing. The problem that we did a substantial percentage increase because of the cost for the tariffs and stuff that are coming in. That is a substantial amount that we actually had to put on it. The plans were to, use the devices that we have, get them to last as long as we can, as much as we can, but also then when it's time to trade them in or repurpose them or sell them, trying to get the most money we can for them instead of just going on auction, actively seeking out vendors that we could get better pricing for. So that way that money can dump back into the replacement cost.
And to answer your question, we get about $980,000 for the entire textbook for the whole district.
Okay.
And a lot of that goes to things like consumables, like workbooks and materials like that.
And if you would refresh my memory, do we have any kind of insurance, like if Johnny loses, or breaks, or Susie or whoever breaks their iPad or their laptop, is there any kind of insurance or?
We did, when we purchased the Microsoft devices that we have, we did purchase insurance with it, and it even covered the accidental protection. So basically, as long as a person doesn't intentionally damage, chunking across the room, a kid having in their backpack and them forgetting it's there, being a kid, dropping their backpack on the ground, that's accidental. It will cover that and it replaces it, yes.
Right.
The last question, I know that there was feedback on the federal level about E-rates specifically with student devices. I remember last year there being a commentary open about that. Has there been movement so that we could get better rates and reimbursed with federal funding?
No, they're more likely going the cybersecurity kind of rate and kind of doing some stuff that way.
Okay, thank you.
So then the next item is your upgrades for your security cameras. That is basically the $685,000. That would be, we did a 10-year sustainability plan for that. Okay. Then we go to the new line devices, which are basically the devices that are in the classrooms. And that is a 7-year sustainability plan. That's the $1.1 million. There is some conversation for that on, at the high school level. Do the teachers need that interactive capability, or do they just need something to broadcast to?
Okay.
The only thing that we have to come up with is basic majority. We can't do classroom by classroom. Excuse me, it'd have to be like the whole school one way or the other, because otherwise teachers change and then they kind of want to change what devices in there. But I think if we kind of did a survey at the high schools and asked them, which would they prefer? Do they use the features that come with the new line, or do they just need a display device? There very well may be some schools that say we really just need a display device, which would be cheaper.
Mr. Woodward, with the new line devices, do all of our teachers have access? Maybe the core content teachers might have one fully installed in their room, but do we have portable devices so that our PE teachers and our music teachers, when they are desiring one, will have access to one?
Yes, I mean, every classroom, we've actually put one in, so if there is a if there's a dedicated art, music, or PE, then they have one in their rooms. Then each school does have at least one or two on a cart, so that way the PE teacher, or even like when they're doing family events or PTA events, they can use it for that as well.
Thank you.
The next item is desktop replacements. So Windows 11 goes out of service
October of 25, but we have a long-term service release till 27 for some of those.
So we still have some desktops. Like right now, we have desktops that, like on the back of the new line devices, there's a desktop, so the teachers don't have to use their laptop for that, and so subs can use it. The check-in stations, the clock-in stations, and the libraries, when they do circulation, there are some positions, like in the cafeterias, there are positions in the maintenance department that, are staying desktops because they don't necessarily need a laptop.
Yeah.
So the reason why we kind of broke these into two areas is if we do get the funds for the one-to-one, then we won't need the top one. the 281. Those then would become, is that the right one? Those would become laptops. Nope, the bottom one. We wouldn't need the 752. We would still need the 281. We wouldn't need the 752 because those then would become laptops. So
basically, if we don't get the one-to-one device money, we will have to replace, we still have to address the desktops in the district. And most of those do reside in the elementary schools as well. And they would have nothing that would work when we have to upgrade them to Windows 11. Gotcha.
Okay. The next line is the intercoms, and we did a 15-year sustainability plan for that. That brings it, to basically $333,000 a year, that would be. Our goal to do the sustainability plans was, one, to show you guys as a board what the cost is to maintain, but also to show the county and the state what it costs to maintain technology. Because in technology funds from the state, as far as in budgeted funds, we get basically $300,000 a year. They do pay for our internet access, so they do cover that, and they do pay for the part of the WAN that E-rate doesn't cover, so that's 20%. And they're also, when we do electronics or other things with E-rate funds, they cover typically the other percentage of that. So we are getting some other assistance from the state, but in budgeted funds for this kind of stuff, we get $300,000, which doesn't cover not even one intercom. So the next thing is replacing outdated monitors, 17-inch monitors that we still have at schools. So we still have at a lot of our elementary schools these 17 little inch monitors that we really need to give these teachers better monitors to be using. And then priority 3 items are library books calculation to increase the library books at the schools, and then also e-books. Some schools do a great job in providing funds for the library to continue to replace books and add books to their collection. Some schools don't have the funds to be able to do that. Some schools do great in writing grants and other ones don't. So we figured we try to kind of put some line items in there so we could get some funds at the district level to provide the schools. But that doesn't take priority over the other ones. And the last thing is we still unfortunately have some old TVs that are hanging in schools above, in classrooms, above teachers' desks that we need to remove and get rid of. That's a process. There's basically 5 locations that we know that have requested them. We also have to take them, the vendor, because we don't take them to surplus, we actually have to take them to properly dispose of them because they are the old TVs and can't be disposed of any other way. So it costs a little bit more to remove those TVs. So that's the last item.
I mean, I always love to hear about maybe have a yard sale and recouping some of that, but it sounds like that's not an option for that, but I appreciate it. So we have no priority 2 for technology.
Correct.
So I do want to bring to your attention, because of that error I made on page 6, the summary sheet, of course, was incorrect because we had the technology priority 1 items at 2.9 million, but it really should be that 8.9 million. So if you move that 8.9 million over and then you make the adjustment at the bottom, it brings that total county appropriation request, possible request, to 13.3 million. And like I said, I will update these sheets for you. I apologize for that error. Okay, so next we have on page 7, furniture and equipment, and I'll let Mr. Lee go through those.
All right, so the total capital is 23 million, and furniture is 200,000.
Yeah.
So we're talking about less than 1% of the request, and repairs and renovations and technology and vehicles are huge. But the kids and the parents see the furniture. And they talk about that first. So anyway, everything on my list is maintenance, equipment, to take care of the schools. And then we have media center, which every kid uses. And we do have some admin, but it's not a lot. And Ashley High School is our oldest high school. And it's 75,000. What? It's our oldest high school. I mean, it's our newest.
Okay, yeah, there we go.
Newest high school, but.
I know, I was like, I'm learning new things today.
How old? 20. Yeah, well, I mean, it's the newest high school, but it's 20-something years old. So, yeah, ding, ding, ding. That, should be an alarm. And so on our list, it's not a lot of money, but we're asking for stuff that's important for the school.
Question on the custodial equipment and stuff. Is this enough to cover all those schools, the custodial? You've got $30,000. Is that enough to, all
Yeah,
schools?
that, maintenance gives us that list, and they're on a schedule
Okay.
to replace vacuums and all those kind of things at the schools. So,
That's enough, okay.
I mean, they're doing their best on that kind of stuff.
Okay, I just didn't know if that was enough, because, we have, that's less than $10,000 a school, for upgrading custodial things. And
Well,
obviously, as you said,
it's
people walk
not
in there,
enough,
first thing I look at
I
is the
can
floor.
tell you.
so.
In reality, it's not, but we're, trying to be on top.
I do want to add, so the priority one items are the custodial equipment and the media furniture for Freeman and Bellamy. So those are the top items that are coming forward to that summary sheet, which equals 53,000. So I just wanted to make sure I shared that out, because you don't have priority numbers on that summary, on that page 7. Next, we have vehicles, and I'll let Deb take the vehicles for us. Thank you.
Before we turn it over to
Oh, okay.
Deb, just to keep in mind too, because I know Ms. Barnhart, $30,000 or, $200,000 doesn't seem like a lot of money. But in the 2014 bond, we opened up 3 new schools, well, 1 new school, replaced 2 schools, renovated multiple schools. And as part of that, we provide all new furniture. We provide all new custodial equipment. We provide all new kitchen equipment, the built-in big equipment, as well as the pots and pans. But, so anytime there's a bond referendum, and we replace all that in renovations, we typically update the library collection. So those bond projects, whether renovations, additions, new construction, they're very comprehensive, and it helps us to keep these requests low.
Very good. Thanks, sir.
Ms. Trafton,
We have a request from a total of 3 divisions for vehicles, transportation, maintenance, and purchasing. The priorities for transportation are 1 72-passenger activity bus and 1 26-passenger activity bus. And just to differentiate, to give you an example of why we chose one of each size, obviously the 72 passenger is going to get the biggest bang for your buck for the most amount of kids. But we do travel to a lot of tight spaces throughout the state, and we do use the smaller activity buses quite a bit for our smaller groups. So if only 12 kids are going on a athletic event, those really help us get in. They're very fuel efficient.
and we don't really have any left to speak of. Our fleet is really, really old. Some are even dated later than, or earlier than 1999. So we have these pegged for those replacements. We weren't able to get them last year, hopefully this year. When we have district-wide events, we really are struggling to get all of our kids transported. We have a limited number of, I think you saw the white.
I was gonna say, is it the white buses? Yeah. Okay.
You saw this, okay. Maintenance has a request for several trucks. One is, well, actually two are the same make and model. The transit vans are the ones that are a little higher. They're kind of cool, sleek looking. They would replace the Chevy 2500 van. These trucks that are being replaced in vans, they have over 150,000 miles. The parts are becoming obsolete, hard to get, and so our mechanics are really struggling to keep the repairs up. So that's the same for the Ford 250. Those two requests, all of those are coming in at $40,000.
Quick question.
Yes.
Why are we getting 2023, not a 2025?
Some of the used models are in excellent condition, so much like purchasing, where we can save a dime, we will. We like to play it safe. There are two other requests for 72 passenger activity buses that were from years prior that we have added back. Well, we didn't add them back on, but we kept them on to see if that would be considered as well. And then finally, purchasing has a commercial grade extended box truck that has a lift. That truck that is currently in use, again, over 150,000 miles. Replacement parts are hard to find. Our mechanics are struggling to keep that waterproof and running properly.
I mean, I guess looking at this summary report, vehicle 1, 2, and 3, the 164 number is coming from that first 72 passenger bus?
Yes.
And then the second, vehicle 2, 108, is it a combination of these Ford Transit, these top four ones?
No, on the first line, the 72 passenger buses, the most recent quotes that we're getting hover around $164,000.
Okay.
And the smaller passenger bus is $108,000.
Okay, that's for that one, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that's all we have for our normal categories that we go through, but now we have this new category, and I'm not sure if Mr. Anderson or who would like to go through that list, but now let's look at your last paperclip document that says facility capital, and let's go through those items. Mr. Anderson?
So when we met with the county manager, CFO, it was obvious that we were using the term capital differently than how they use it. And they said that we want your annual repair, renovation, your capital outlay, that to be maintaining your existing facilities. And then anything that additions, renovations, improvements, that's what they call capital. And so this year we split that out. I actually had them combined at one point, and I was confusing myself, so I said, there's no way I'll be able to explain this and prioritize it. So, we separated into a repair and renovation or a capital outlay and then capital improvements. So the first item on there is a facility needs assessment. Very similar to what we're currently doing at New Hanover High School. We would go through with a team that would assess the conditions of building components, building equipment, building structure, and the goal of that is to be able to go to the county and say, this is how much it costs on an annual basis to maintain our facilities at their, at their current level for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
And so, and that was a very specific request from them to us. They had gone through a very similar process a few years back, and so this is the first request. The second one, safety and security. This is phase 4. We have been primarily focused on security vestibules at schools, but again, with when we do that, we also go ahead and tackle the low-hanging fruit. Intercom systems have been replaced at schools. Anything that we can add into that project easily and affordably, we do. And in phase 4, that's Rolling Grice, if I'm not mistaken.
Rolling Grice is next on the list.
Rolling Grice is next. Line item 3 are mobile units at Porter's Neck. If you recall, the board approved funding for 4 mobile units at Porter's Neck 2 years ago. Availability and cost, we were only able to purchase and install 2. We had this in our capital request last year, but we didn't receive any capital funding, and so we're including that again this year. Artificial turf at Laney. You've seen this before. We're hoping to get on a 4-year plan where we'll a 3-year plan. New Hanover already has artificial turf. But we would be replacing the turf in the stadium with artificial turf at the remaining 3 high schools. The design of that is already done. So there were a couple of projects that 2 years ago that we requested design funding, and then the next year we requested the construction funding. So the design for artificial turf is completed.
It's permitted.
And permitted.
So this would be the second, because New Hanover's already got it, so
This would be the second, that's correct.
How much does it save us in the cost of maintaining the field?
Well, we're at $107,000 a year at Laney, so it's it doesn't, that translates to like a 14-year payback.
Yeah.
However, that doesn't take into consideration, that's just the, everyday maintenance that we contract for. It doesn't include the maintenance that our maintenance operations staff do, any repairs they do, and it doesn't include all the work that the staff does on that field. Our coaches are pretty proud of their fields. They're out there working on those fields all the time. Plus the prep work that goes into a game, because if you put in artificial turf, you'll have the lines sewn in. The culinary arts classroom at New Hanover, similar to Laney, the design for this has already been completed, and we're ready to move forward with construction. Cafeteria renovation at Laney. Participation at Laney has gone up significantly. We're glad for that. Enrollment has gone up, and we really do need to do some renovations to have the flow through that cafeteria be more efficient and the space more attractive as well. Renovations to carpentry and ROTC at Hoggard. We're looking at renovating those 2 spaces and swapping locations. And then we included design for River Lights, Williams, and Pine Valley, so that in the event of a bond referendum in November 26, we can have those designs completed, permitted, and be ready to move forward. They'd be shovel-ready projects. A new concession stand at New Hanover. This is one that's been on the list before as well. It'd be the existing one that is on the 2nd floor. It's not easily accessible, and moving it to the 1st floor would include better utility service and allow them to expand their menu and their capabilities within that concession stand. And then renovations to the media center at Howe Pre-K. The space is not used as a media center. Currently, it's been divided up with some portable partitions and bookcases and, that's also been on there for a little while. We'd like to go in there and, make a little more permanent renovations to that space for the school's use. Any questions on those?
I guess as far as the process goes, looking at this budget summary, we got state lottery, R&R, and the county appropriations, and with the adjustment that Ms. Sutton had spoke to, it would be totaling 17.5. And so with this additional facilities capital, this is an additional to the maintenance repair. So we're looking at 17.5 plus the facilities would be another 11.7. So we're looking at close to $30 million.
Correct.
Okay. And so, but this is the format, my understanding from the conversation is the format is what the county is requesting for us to do so they can see here's kind of the operational side of maintenance and the more of the heavy hitters. Okay.
That's correct.
And I love the number one because the $500,000 for the study is needed and it shows the process that we want to continue.
Correct.
Moving forward, whoever is in the seats of decision-making, that we have a schedule and not whack-a-mole. So,
And just to clarify, that 500,000 would cover all the other schools, right?
That's correct.
And it would give us a chance to get to the practice space. We need this before we can even explore getting ahead of the game and replacing it before, end-of-life replacement.
So I think my question to the committee then would be, do we want to carry forward to the full board what you just outlined, Ms. Barnhart? I think with the adjustment to technology, we're at 16.5 million plus the 11.7 million for the facilities capital sheet we just went over. So we're right at 28.2 million. Is that what we want to carry forward to the full board as a recommendation from this committee?
Is that your recommendation?
This would be the first time that I think we get number 1, 2, and 3 all in there together. That is a sizable ask. However, there's nothing in there that's wrong.
Yeah, so this is the recommendation from staff. Their priority ones are things that they're saying that they need for this upcoming year. So I would say, yes, this is the recommendation from the staff. I just want to make sure that the board agrees with the recommendation going forward to the full board.
Well, I would just be prepared, I would say, and I don't mean to speak for you, so, but I would be prepared to say, well, if we just went with the number ones and held back number 2s and 3s, what would, at least have that number in hand so that the full board said, well.
That is the number.
Okay.
Just going with the number ones.
that's close to 30.
And
Yeah.
yes, it's right at 28.2 million.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Woodward, prior to doing that, I just would like to say, looking at these, just so I can wrap my head around the long-term process. Every year we would be coming with what the top 1, 2, and 3, and so the board would decide, the whole board would decide, do we want to ask for priority 1, 2, and 3 collectively? So this is not necessarily a reoccurring expense. I know from questions with county commissioners, looking at these projects, this number, that total 28 that we're looking at, is talking about priority ones. Is there any projects in here that would not be able to be completed in the fiscal year that we were asking to receive these funds in? Because that's a question that gets asked to me by our county commissioners, and I think it's important that we know the answer.
Most of our projects are not completed within the fiscal year.
Okay.
And that's part of the confusion and discussions
100%.
that we've been having. So typically, if one of these projects is funded, we get our funding in July. We go through design and permitting in the fall. We'll be bidding in early spring. ordering equipment so that we're ready to move forward in the following summer.
Okay.
So
Which is
in
the
most
next budget
cases,
cycle for the county.
it's
Right.
into August before that project is wrapping up, and even into September before it's closed out. So if the county were to look at our expenditures, which that's what they look at, they don't look at encumbrances, they're looking at expenditures. If they look at expenditures in January, they're going to see, well, we've only spent maybe 20% of our funds. But we're in the process of bidding the project,
Correct.
and
So
the entire
then
design and
I do
CA.
have a recommendation, Mr. Wildebohr. What I would recommend is that we move this forward for the whole board with the delineation that what projects we would be able to complete in the fiscal year, because our county commissioners need to understand that the commitment that there really is more so a 2-year cycle, but only a certain amount will be actually funded in their budget for this year. I think that will help to speak to their planning numbers, and it would also kind of alleviate some of the confusion, because we have a process that we go through that we're doing with due diligence, and I tell them every time that we save money of what we're saving, but I think that this ask is a large ask. However, I think if we're able to present that portion of it to the county commissioners, it might be easier to look at it for a 2-year stint, which is what their budget cycle would be doing.
Easier to absorb that way.
Yeah.
Right, right. Well, the other thing too is I think if we don't ask for it, we're not going to get it, so.
So I would make a recommendation to bring forward the priority ones to the board with the understanding that the staff would be able to kind of delineate what total dollars we would be able to spend in this current fiscal year, so 25, 26.
That's a good motion. I will second that, and we'll make it official. How do you vote?
Yes.
As do I, so it passes 2-0. Ms. Sutton, anything else?
That's it. I appreciate everyone.
All right,
Thank you.
with that, I would entertain a motion to close the capital outlay committee meeting,
So moved.
and I will second that. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are closed. Thank you all.